Welcome to College Talk, a podcast brought to you by American campus communities where students love living. Join us for topics including how to prepare your student and mom and dad for college so they can thrive. Now your host, Anthony Rad.
Hello, listeners, and thank you for joining us for the second podcast episode of College Talk. I'm your host, Anthony Rad. In today's episode, we're going to explore the topic of campus safety with two experts with esteemed careers working in the University Police Department. Today's topic includes awareness and practices for students to be safe and be smart on and around campus, as well as tips and tricks for parents to help remind their students to be mindful of safe practices in order to create that positive college experience. We are very excited to speak with our special guest today. Our first guest is Sergeant Daniel Benitez. He is part of the Texas State University Police Department, as well as the Administrative Sergeant, and holds a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice. He has served his alma mater on the department team for 24 years now, and prior to that, he served as a sheriff's deputy. Sergeant Benitez heads up the Community Engagement Office, providing activities, training, and events that pretty much familiarize students with their campus police and also help them enjoy a safe experience at the university. And our second guest is Interim Chief of Police James B. Dixon, who took the helm of Chief of Police at the Texas State University Police Department on June 21st of this year, bringing 10 years of military experience and more than 26 years of law enforcement and community service experience. Dixon will continue to grow and enhance some of the initiatives that are more important to students, including the Mental Health Liaison Officer, the highly successful Student Police Academy, the new Ride-Along program, and enhanced officer training with a new emphasis on racial intelligence training. Thank you both so much for taking the time to speak with us today, and let's go ahead and dive right in. You know, safety can mean a variety of things to different people, especially during these times with COVID. So my first question to each of you is, how do you think about the topic of safety and all that it encompasses? Sergeant Benitez, let's start with you.
Well, like you said, in everything that it encompasses, there's many things in how we kind of look at safety. So individually, like we look at ourselves and what do we do for our personal safety as a group when we go out, whenever we are at any public place, how we take care of ourselves medically with COVID and everything that's going on now. So when a parent ever asks me, is your campus safe? You know, we have crime just like everybody else does. We have our crime logs up. We have everything that happens here that's reported to us. It's no secret. We put it all up there for everybody to see. If you look at the Jean Cleary Act, that requires us to put that up there. Every university has that. So we have nothing to hide. We have regulations and rules that we have to follow, and we abide by those. If we take those seriously and make sure that our community knows everything of what's going on that is reported. Of course, there's some things that are not reported to us, and those are the crimes or the areas in which I think parents are kind of looking at is how do I keep my child safe? There's many things that we talk about with our students as individually, like you walking alone at night with, different routes, not walking by yourself, not talking on the phone, and not being distracted. Times that we talk about personal safety in their own home is, locking their windows, making sure that people know that they're home or that they're not home, what indications that they give out, on social media. Other things is when they go out to entertainment, such as bars or concerts, as to, what type of precautions that they take during those events or those events that they go to and with alcohol and drugs. And then we talk about our personal safety with COVID, like who are we hanging out with? Who do we socialize with? What type of precautions are we going to take for ourselves when we talk about this? So, yeah, you're right. There's so much personal safety things that we can talk about. So we try to be thorough in everything of what, different situations or what if situations.
Chief Dixon, it sounded like Sergeant Benitez was listing some fundamental safety tips and tricks. Anything that you might be able to add to that list, especially those things that might seem so minute, but that students typically aren't aware?
Well, he touched on a lot of good things, and I suppose technology is a big thing here on campus. You have a lot of students on cell phones. You have a lot of students actually are walking, paying more attention to their cell phone than where they're walking. It covers that personal safety. A lot of students have earphones on. So I think it's really important to educate our students. And that's what we do normally. We educate our students to know their surroundings, not to talk on the phone, walk in well-lit areas, look at the surroundings around your vehicle before you get in your vehicle. Little small things like that will help. Students should not put a lot of information about themselves and what they're doing on social media. People are taking advantage of our students because they're posting personal information on social media. And that's something they should be aware of. A lot of people are targeting college students because it's their first time away from home and they're new. They may make those small mistakes. Those small mistakes pay off big for the scammer.
You mentioned technology, social media, which is interesting. Technology and social media have grown exponentially throughout the years. With this generation of students and these college campuses, they highly rely on social media as platforms for communication, information. Do you mind maybe elaborating a little bit more, the both of you, on how students can incorporate safety through social media channels at all?
I can. So under my area in the community engagement, which I oversee. So I'm also in charge of the social media. So we do give out a lot of information on social media as far as safety tips. So, and they could be something that's just so minute, like we talked about, something that's common sense as to, like maybe an example like auto theft. We encourage our students to, number one, lock your vehicle. If you lock your vehicle, the percentage of the vehicle break-in or a theft of a vehicle or burglary of a vehicle, it goes down substantially. So there's a lot of things that we try to do social media-wise. We try to put a lot of emphasis on some of our crimes. So if something's happening, we like to send out our safety tips to let them be aware. Like maybe if there's a scam through our email for fraud, we do have a lot of students that unfortunately fall to this type of scam where, that somebody's looking to take care of their dog and will pay them $2,000 a week. If it sounds too good to be true, then you may want to talk to somebody else to make sure that it's not. And therefore, we do get a lot of students that get scammed off of that during the emails because they think because they have an email from Texas State or if they have an email from a legit source, that they think that is everything's going to be okay. Well, it's not. People get into our emails. They're able to put in some of that stuff. So we try to send information stuff. We try to send out in case there's a crime that we can't handle. But we may have that one person. So we send out those crime alerts. Well, and that's just only through social media. Through the Gene Cleary Act also, we have emergency notifications. We have timely warnings. And we have access to text messages. We have access to their emails. We have access to, social media in which we can send all this stuff out. So if we need to get the information out, that information can get out through social media. It's a lot. There's a lot out there. And there's so many apps that, for us that we're not even aware of as to how we can get even more information out there. So we do hire some student workers to kind of keep up on trend as to what is out and what's hot and what's not, and what's cool, what's not cool. And, we try to do the best that we can with communication and taking advantage of the technology that's out right now and be able to use that to our advantage to not only solve crimes, but to give out information and to remind people of those normal, common sense things that we kind of take for granted.
It's interesting, that you mentioned technology can go both ways. We can utilize those resources to help us, or it could go the other direction. Like you said, these students are seeing these apps and these emails and these communications. And you made a really good point, Sergeant. If it's too good to be true, it's probably not. So kind of keep that in mind as well. And thank you for sharing that. Talking about safety, we absolutely don't want our students to live in fear, but to be aware and responsible at the same time. How do you balance this in your training and communication to the students?
We don't want our students to be living in fear, but in this world, with every good there's a bad, and with every right there's a wrong. So we try to teach our students to make sure that there's always an opposite in everything that happens. Living in fear is just one of those things is that I don't think that you can kind of get rid of that if somebody's living in fear. So we try to teach our students, it's like, hey, when you go to a restaurant, kind of glance. Or you go into a bar, glance to see where all your exits are at. Don't take drinks from somebody you don't know. That don't be able to kind of look at your surroundings and make sure that Chief Dixon was saying, like, where you park your vehicle. If you're the only one that's deciding to leave and you decide to walk out there by yourself, you're putting yourself into that situation where you may find yourself in a position where you don't want to be in. So we try to teach our students, don't be alone. Try to be with somebody else, or just stay that extra 20 minutes at the bar right when it closes, so you can get home safely and make sure that you attend school the next day, talk to your parents the next day, and all that other good stuff.
It's all about personal awareness. Thank you so much for sharing that, Sergeant. You did mention, unfortunately, there is the fear of safety, and which kind of leads us to our next topic of mental health awareness. With these students. Chief Dixon, as the interim chief of police, what can you provide to our listeners in regards to mental health awareness and the warning signs out there?
Texas State University is one of the few universities that actually have a full-time mental health officer on duty all the time. Officers are primarily first ones on scene in a mental health crisis. A lot of students come to school, they come to college, and there's some inherent anxiety tied to them leaving home, finding something new in a new town, meeting new friends. So there's things that goes along with that. And our officers are trained to recognize the signs that the student is showing to get them help if need be. Our officer, our mental health officer, Jessica Kinney, is on duty during the daytime and available after hours to talk with students if they are in need. Most of the time, our officers facilitate with the counseling center to help the students deal with the situation. We do follow up with the students to make sure that they're okay, to make sure that they're getting the help they need, the medication they need, if they need medication or anything like that. We get them in touch with all the support services that they may need. And we want to make sure that we have somebody full time to focus on that very important part of the student coming to college. The signs that officers look for, it's all over the chart. Unfortunately, some students are already diagnosed before they come to college, and they do a lot of follow-up either with our counseling center or with our mental health officer. Sometimes the officer can show up on scene and recognize that this student has some anxiety, the student is not communicating with her family, mood swings, the student is isolating, not eating, and feel like there's no way out of their issue. Those things trigger us to move further into our investigation to get them the help they need.
Thank you, Chief Dixon. So how do you communicate that to your students when they do have a friend, a roommate, a peer who is, suffering through that? Basically, how do you tell them to call for support?
So, Anthony, I'll answer that question. I think that if we're talking about friends of somebody who notices somebody who is going through a mental health crisis or kind of sees some traits or some characteristics that are not them, we do have individuals in every hall, a residential hall too, for them to talk to. They're able to talk to their resident assistant. They're able to talk to the hall director. We have numerous social media posts that we put out there for our mental health liaison, Officer Kinney, to put out there. All the residence halls know that. And so we encourage roommates or friends, and they see something that's out of characteristic, to say something, because they're the ones that are going to know. And so we give them resources. Sometimes when they don't feel comfortable, the university has programs and phone numbers in which they can call. Ours is called Pause Alert, where you're able to give an anonymous tip. So when those anonymous tips come in, it goes to a group of individuals in which Officer Kinney is part of. And that's how we make contacts with these individuals. So in the beginning stages, it's like everything is completely different. Like one of the characteristics that we say that is maybe someone who sleeps a lot. Well, you have those people that sleep a lot, but then you have a person who sleeps a lot, and then all of a sudden they're not sleeping. So that's kind of out of their character. So that's how we try to identify that. And that's just one illustration. We have one person who loves to eat, and then all of a sudden stops eating, right? Or doesn't, and then has mood swings, or just feels isolated. Or when you ask them a question like, "Hey, how you doing?" There are rates. Those people that are going through those crises don't know that they're doing that. And it's up to their friends, their family to kind of recognize that and kind of say something. That's what happens, I think, most of the time is a lot of individuals will not say anything. And then that's when we kind of get to a situation sometimes where it gets too far. And then we're just like, oh, I think we've heard it many times before when something really bad happens and we talk to individuals that knew that they start giving the warning signs, right? You're like, well, yeah, I kind of noticed that he was not sleeping very well. I kind of noticed that he was kind of doing things off the way. And then he started posting all this stuff on social media. Well, hint, right? So that's why we encourage us to say something. And some of the things that we give our parents is like, hey, send something to your students, send something to your son or daughter, a care package, something that's small, just to kind of let them know, like, hey, we know you're going to college. We know you're by yourself. We know that you have to do your own laundry. We know that you have to fend for your own groceries. Hey, just to kind of have a scheduled time, come down for a visit, see them, touch them, be able to connect with them. And they should be able to know if something's wrong, or they should be able to maybe get a hint of that. That's what we try to encourage our parents to do. We try to stay away from like, hey, I'm just going to send my kid to college and woo, it's parent time, right? But our students still need their support. They still need our loved ones. They still need everybody that's here at Texas State University, and we try to do the best that we can to try to help.
Just a simple hi, how are you? A simple phone call. I know back when I was in college, my parents would talk on a weekly basis. Every Sunday night they knew to call me, and we'd have a little quick chat. They ask how I'm doing. I tell them about school and life, and it was just nice to know that they were there and they were listening. But that kind of leads me to another follow-up question for you guys. Are there any trends related to high crime periods that parents and students should be aware of to be extra alert?
One of our biggest trend is kind of the crimes of opportunity. Let me explain the crimes of opportunity is if a student goes to a library and takes their laptop, their iPad, their iPhone, their recorder, and they sit down, set all that up, and then they're on the first level, and then they decide to go look for a book on the 7th level, and then decide they want to come back and all their stuff is gone. That's kind of, of course, that's a theft, but we call those crimes of opportunity, giving somebody the ability to get their stuff and walk off with it. And unfortunately, it's kind of one of those things where we tell our students, like, either you pack it up, take it with you, or go to the library with somebody to study so they can watch your stuff while you're gone. And that kind of goes into everything else, burglaries of habitations, which are residence halls. Leaving their doors unlocked because, their roommate's going to come back. They'll be back in 5 minutes, right? And then 5 hours later, while somebody else is already in their room taking their stuff, has already been through there, then the roommate shows up. So kind of stuff like that we try to encourage our students to say, lock your stuff up, whether it comes to your vehicle, your residence hall, or anything, any purses of leaving it out somewhere where it could just be picked up by anybody.
Before we wrap things up, I'd like to always get our final thoughts from each of our guest speakers with our podcast. And, Chief Dixon, we'll go ahead and start with you. Do you mind just kind of letting our listeners know any kind of final thoughts for parents to give advice to their students before they start their academic year?
Check on your son or daughter periodically and make sure you even come visit them. We have a lovely campus if you haven't seen it yet. Tell your son or daughter to always be aware of their surroundings, to make sure that they are utilizing the buddies to secure your valuables, and just know that we still have the COVID protocols that we have on campus that we're still dealing with to stay safe.
Sergeant Benitez, anything you want to add? Any advice for parents to give their students?
I do talk to a lot of parents during the summer, and I get that pleasure of doing that. So on one note, I like to tell all parents that we genuinely care for our students. We want them to succeed. We mentor. We try to make sure that we treat all our students with the utmost respect. And we try to give them opportunities to correct themselves. So parents, the little bit of advice that I give them is don't be naive. Make sure that you understand that students are exposed to a lot of different things, a lot of new things, a lot of different things. So what I give the parents is talk to your students. Know what you did in high school. Know what you did in college. And know that, that opportunity is there for your child as well, to make sure that we talk about the good things and make sure that positive remarks that we give our students and to make sure that they are doing good, monitor their status, monitor what they're doing in class. In all due respect, I think parents can only do so much, and it's up to that student or that individual to make the decisions that they're going to have to make for themselves. And because this is their college experience. This is still real life, and that, we like to make sure that we know that there's also a lot of great things that happen for our students: graduation, success, getting a great job, being able to go out and just be successful, and then coming back and giving back to their university. So I want to give out a shout out to our guys here that we genuinely care about our students. We wish them great success and diploma.
Well said, Sergeant. And, like you mentioned before, at the end of the day, these students are here for an education. College is a privilege to a lot of these students. But at the same time, they are human. So it's just all about making those right choices, those safe choices, and being aware of their surroundings and what's going on. I think that's just kind of a great recipe for success if we give them the tools to succeed. So we really do appreciate all of you taking the time to speak with us today. And this has been a very engaging conversation. And hopefully our listeners have some new perspectives and tools regarding safety to help them have a successful start to the school year. And we want to wish you and your department all the very best, and thank you for listening. Thanks a lot, guys. We appreciate it.